I mean, if you're waking up, this is everywhere. MPs set to be briefed in the Commons later on the cyber threat posed by China after suspicions that Beijing is behind a wave of cyber attacks against parliamentarians. They've also been accused of accessing the personal details, check this, of over 40 million of us via the electoral roll in a hack on the Electoral Commission 3 years ago in 2021.
Well, we're joined now by Conservative MP and former chair of the Defence Select Committee, Tobias Ellwood. Good morning, Tobias. This hack happened in 2021. Why are we only hearing about it now, the fact that the government are blaming China for that hack?
That's a really good question. We'll probably hear more about that today. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time to confirm where this attack came from. Don't forget, this isn't just happening to the UK, it's happening to other countries as well. So there's an awful lot of sharing of data to confirm what is happening here. We're in this difficult situation that we trade with China, but at the same time, China is pursuing an alternative interpretation of our global order, and they are teaming up with Russia and Iran to exploit perhaps our timidity in protecting that world order. We've seen that in Ukraine, we've seen that in the Middle East as well, and of course what's going to happen with Taiwan as well. And we've become increasingly exposed because of our way of life, because of our embracing the digital sphere. It becomes easier, therefore, to influence political opinion and what's happening to sow economic discord as well, getting us to argue with each other because of what we're reading online, and of course to actually cause disruption through those cyber attacks as well. So I very much welcome the government's statement here today. I would like us to move faster, though, to be able to call China out and stand up to China.
It's interesting, isn't it, Tobias? Because from as much as the last 2 years, whenever I've spoken to you on this show and other shows, you've always talked about that threat of China. And I guess in the early days, that makes it sound like it's a long time ago, people were like, oh, come on, you're all warmongering. We talked about China, we talked about that axis with Russia and Iran, and it's almost like it's coming home to roost. And what I find, I mean, I was saying earlier, and I'd love your take on this, right? Presumably, politicians and officials find themselves in a difficult position, because if you jump up and down and say, you know, the security terror level threat's awful, everybody panics and whatever, you don't say enough and it takes a long time, people can accuse you of not being on the ball. What does this government do? For example, we hear TikTok is about or trying to be banned in America. Is that something we should do in the United Kingdom? What do you're an expert in defence, how do we fight against this cyber warfare as a country?
Well, the only way we can fight against cyber warfare and against any enemy is by working, any competitor, is actually by working with our allies. We've all got to do the same thing. Otherwise, China is able to exploit the differences that we have. And that is the big challenge that we face. We need a China strategy. We need to recognize that this is China's century, that in the next few decades, it could easily challenge or indeed overtake the United States militarily, economically, technologically as well. How do we then manage that? We have entered another Cold War. We've discussed that in the past. The difference between this Cold War and the last is that China relies on trade with the international community to keep its country going. But we've not done enough to confirm the rules that China needs to apply, that needs to follow, like the rest of us don't do. If we start doing that, China will start to conform and play by international rules rather than exploiting them and pursuing a different interpretation, taking Russia and indeed Iran and other countries along with it.
Tobias, moving on now to that horrific terror attack that took place over the weekend in a concert hall in Russia. Russia have charged 4 men over that attack, and ISIS, or ISIS-K, I believe, have taken responsibility for that attack, although I haven't seen that necessarily confirmed from within Russia. How much do you think that Russia, though, could use this terror attack to further their propaganda against Ukraine and other actors globally?
Yes, that's exactly what Putin will do. This is a major terrorist attack by any sense of the imagination. But how Putin has responded actually raises so many questions. Firstly, about the competence of ISIS-K, that periodically does target Russia. It doesn't appear in the Western media so much. But after Russia backed Syria in the civil war there a decade ago, ISIS-K has been constantly attacking Russia on a periodic basis. Secondly, why did the Russian security forces that actually watch Putin's back, that keep Putin in power, why did they fail to identify the attack, particularly that when the CIA had actually shared its own intelligence to say an operation was pending? And then finally, it will worry the ordinary Russians who largely buy in, sadly, into Putin's claim, his authoritarianism, that in the knowledge that by giving Putin all that power, he will keep the nation safe. Putin stakes his legitimacy on being in total command, on being in fully in control, of protecting the motherland from all the threats he tells his people are out there. And many Russians could easily be asking today, what on earth are we doing in Ukraine when actually the real threat is from Islamic extremism, and that's not being challenged.
And it's interesting because the minute I saw this, and Tobias, you know, I'm not into conspiracy theories, but the first thing I thought was false flag. The first thing I thought was, has he, I mean, maybe it's a terrible thing to say, has he arranged this himself to absolutely give him further justification to tell the Russian people that they need to go even further in Ukraine? Whether he did that or ignored the CIA via the whatever, the fact of the matter is, immediately he will use this, which asks so many questions. Of course, the loss of life, horrific, but the way those four men with black eyes were paraded, I mean, the whole thing to me, not stage managed, but certainly adds weight to the fact that he will use this, won't he? And again, we've got to wake up to it, haven't we? We have to wake up to it.
Yeah, you make a number of important points there. Firstly, you imply a false flag. That's exactly what happened in the past with another attack on a theatre, which was clearly instigated by Russian forces. And it was designed for Putin to tell the message to his own people, look, you need me to keep your country strong. So you can't actually rule anything out. From what I understand at the moment, all the intelligence I've seen, this does look like a legitimate attack. And that actually raises bigger questions too, difficult questions for us, because ISIS-K are based in Tajikistan, also in Afghanistan, which, of course, we departed. They are arch enemies of the Taliban, and they are on the rise. They are recruiting and training, and they have, want to challenge the West as much as they want to challenge Russia. Therefore, an attack in Moscow could easily be could be copycatted in other capital cities across the West as well. So the threat of terrorism is very much alive and very much a concern to the British as well as into the Russian people.
Tobias, do you think that there might be an official increase of the terror threat level here domestically in light of what happened in Russia over the weekend?
I don't think there will be. It's a good question to ask. The one thing we're very good at here, as we shared with our own intelligence, or the CIA did with Russia, is that we can actually pick up not the lone wolf, not the individuals that take things into their own hands, but when there is something orchestrated and so forth, our intelligence agencies are arguably the best in the world, and they can pick up and actually identify these potential threats way in advance. I'm not saying that is always going to cover us, but from that perspective, we would firstly see a rise in that. But it's very, very clear from MI6 that they are absolutely concerned with the rise of Islamic extremism, not just in the UK, but wider afield as well.
Tobias, always a pleasure, but I'm going to finish in a way that you didn't think I was going to finish. Guess what I found out at the weekend, my friend?
I have no idea.
Well,
I have no idea where you're going to go with this.
I've just moved and you're my MP.
Well, I look forward to knocking your door very soon.
Well, you might well be, and I might be demanding a meeting. Tobias Ellwood, thank you very much indeed. Former Conservative MP, the Conservative MP, Tobias Ellwood, thank you very much indeed.
Former Chair of the Defence Select Committee.
That's what I was trying to say. Good man.
Let's